Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Medium's Table. I'm your host, Michelle Gardner. This podcast is your personal invitation to join me at the intersection of the everyday and the extraordinary. Together, we'll explore the magic of mediumship, share spiritual stories, and connect with fellow mediums on this incredible journey. So grab a seat, pour yourself a cuppa, and come join us at the Medium's Table, where spirits gather and stories unfold. Disclaimer, just a heads up to all our lovely followers. Our social media is a space where we share personal stories, including those of various mediums. Let's keep the vibe positive and respect each other's beliefs. Every journey is unique, and here we celebrate the diversity of experiences. I'd like to welcome to the show.
Here's got the giggles.
Panel of mediums. It's always a fun time when we all get together, as you can tell and see. So our topic today is a rather fun one, but also a rather serious one. And we will talk about the things that most podcasters or mediums won't, because that's just what we do. We like to make sure that we cover all subjects and topics of any nature. And there are a lot of subjects and topics out there that, to talk about. Today's subject will be, can spirits or entities have intimate or sexual encounters with humans? Now, before we get started, we're going to go around. I'm going to introduce each medium on the panel, and they're going to tell you their name, a little bit about themselves and where they're from. Dawn, with no E, how would you like to crack on with that?
Well, thank you for having me again. I didn't think I'd be allowed back after the last time. But so I'm Dawn. I live in England. I'm a medium and a trance medium. I also publish books as well as a sideline because I get bored. And we'll shortly be setting up a YouTube channel on how to research your family trees. So I've got many strings to my bow, but my biggest love is mediumship.
Fantastic. Dawn, with an E.
Hi, thanks for having me back as well. I live in Ontario, Canada. I am an evidential medium, and I also do Reiki healing.
Awesome. Jeanette.
Good afternoon. Thanks again, Michelle. This is a lot of fun. I think next Friday I'll just bring a cocktail because in the States it's happy hour, at least in South Florida. 5 o'clock. So I'll show up with my cocktail. I am a medium, channeler. I do trance work as well. My previous thing was a psychologist and a therapist, and I really enjoy seeing people have breakthroughs when they're stuck in life, having them reconnect with people that are always around them and teach them to utilize the tools that I believe we're all born with and that should be accessed by each and every one of us. And love nature, hiking, mountains, ocean, and enjoying life as long as I've got it out for me. Okay. Thank you.
Fantastic. Julie.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm in Pennsylvania and I'm also a medium. I was also a therapist for many, many years, and I'm a Reiki master. I like to do trance work as well, and I'm a paranormal investigator. So
nice. Elena.
Hi, thanks for having me. My first time here, so I'm a bit nervous. I'm from Ireland, and I'm a medium, and I also practice Wicca. And I'm also learning healing, and I just love the joy you can give to people when you can connect to their loved ones on the other side. And it gives me joy to do that too.
Fantastic. Thank you. Christian.
Well, my name is Christian Williams. I'm an evidential medium and also a trance medium and channeler. And I am also a part-time landlord. And my background way back when was my degree is computer science. So that's what I did. And so I'm very right-brained most of the time, and need to really activate my left brain, or maybe I have that backwards. But basically, I tend to be very logical and very, very there. So I had to minimize my logical mind to do this work.
Right. Excellent. Kim.
I'm so glad to be back. Thank you for having me back. I'm from Chicago. My passion is holistic energy work, and I accidentally got into mediumship several years ago.
Awesome. I love the accidental part. Okay, and that's all our mediums in a nutshell. Now, the topic can be a little bit sensitive for some people. And if you've experienced this, the listeners and viewers out there, just know that you're not alone. These things happen. They are real. If you think, did I imagine that? Am I crazy? Obviously, you can speak to a therapist, but these things do happen. And we're going to have each medium tell their story about encounters that they've had. Dawn, would you like to go first with no E?
Okay, well, this was many, many, many years ago, before I even believed in mediumship. A lady I knew, I was around hers having coffee, and we were talking about her ex-partner. So when you're talking about entities or spirits, this is a bit different, but something I'd like to share anyway. So we're talking about her ex-partner, and he was quite a nasty piece of work, and physically very, it was traumatic for her. And she proceeded to tell me that at night he would visit her on the astral plane. And I'm like, the hell? Thinking, God, she's lost the plot, this one. That can't be real, can it? So that was kind of like my fit. And she was deadly serious. And she was saying that, he would be there in the bedroom and she could feel him. And he took advantage of her in a sexual way whilst she's sleeping next to her husband. She said she could feel him on her body, the whole thing that goes with. So obviously unwanted attention. So I was a bit perplexed, a bit bemused at the time, I guess. I'm thinking, she's a bit of a wacko, as you do. And then years and years and years passed, and this woman I know who's so not the type of person to come up with anything fanciful or, way out there, spiritual, this and the other, tells me that when her husband died, a year or so later, he visited her in a dream where they had sex, and apparently she had the best orgasm she'd ever experienced in her life when he was here. So obviously he's learned a thing or two when he's gone back to spirit. And I was like, oh God, I don't want to know. I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear this. But it got me to thinking, we live in a 3D world. What can't we see in, the fourth dimension, the fifth dimension, the sixth dimension, and so on and so forth? When we die, do we then become these dimensional beings who are able to travel through different dimensions or dimensional planes and have a presence and are able to affect the lower dimensional planes, as in the third dimension, but we're not, us on this dimension, and not seeing these beings? That's where my thought process goes with this. I've no evidence of that personally, but on a another note, I have physical evidence of spirits knocking on doors, you know, running down hallways, me hearing them laugh, me seeing with my mind's eye children running in a space and saying, oh, she can see us, and laughing. So was that me shifting into a different dimension and opening up the veil, if you like, for me to be able to see into that world and hear that world? And is that possible, how people can feel from that world? Just a thought.
Yeah, and definitely something to ponder over. That is definitely. Thank you, Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
Dawn with an E. What have you got for us?
Interesting. My story is kind of similar, actually. A friend of mine, she had lost her husband. They were like friends for many years, both of them. And he had cancer. And so she had told me that, you know, near the end, that his one regret was that they couldn't, you know, have sex, you know, before he went. So he passed. And at that time, I had actually gone to a medium, and he had come through. And so I had brought her a recording and shared this recording. And we had an evening of drinks and stuff. And she had said that her and her family were sensing him. They were, you know, hearing things. They could tell that he was in the house and that sort of thing. And then she said about a few weeks later, she was sleeping. It was the middle of the night, and he was there. And she said he had sex with me. She said, there was nothing I could do. I was sort of like just dumbfounded by the whole thing. And she said that she almost had an orgasm. It was that real to her.
It wasn't that good then, no?
Didn't quite get there. But she said that after that experience, there was never any other indications of his presence. She said, I feel like he used up all his energy in that last act. And she said, we did not sense his presence again.
Wow. So it was like the last hurrah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Almost hurrah.
Yeah, almost. And that's the first that I'd ever heard of anything like that, you know? So, yeah, that was pretty surprising to me.
Yeah. And I'm sure it would have been a surprise to her to even see him.
Yeah.
Regardless of the experience. Do you know what I mean? Just to see him.
That's right.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Dawn.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jeanette.
Well, mine, they're a little bit more PG than what we've had here, but they've given me food for thought, as, you know, I don't know, where my mind goes is more like, well, would they have more stamina in spirit than they do here physically? Anyway, back to my PG story. So the very first physical contact that I felt from an entity that wasn't there with spirit, I was 6 years old, and I was drifting off to sleep, and it was on the eve of my 7th birthday. And I could sense that the door to our room had been open. I shared a room with my grandmother, and my sister was in a crib. There's 3 of us. And there was a very cold sensation, almost like a draft that came in. And I felt someone just kiss me on the cheek. And then there was kind of a laugh, but it was endearing. It wasn't, you know, evil or spooky. It was like, like what, you know, when a small child does something cute. But I felt it. I felt the lips on my cheek. You know, covers over the head, freaked out. Later on, other things were taking place in the house. And I ended up finding out what it was. It was an uncle of mine who had passed before I was born. He was my dad's only brother who died of a brain tumor, I think just as he hit 30. And he apparently was visiting my father. And I know this because I heard my dad's bedroom. I don't know what drew me, right? There are moments where it's almost like a magnetic pull, either towards someone or to do something or to call somebody. It was one of those sensations. And I went over to his door and I creaked it open a little bit. And I had that same cold chill. And there was a booming male voice. And then I could hear my father answer in a very meek, almost sounded like he was crying. It was very strange. It scared me. And I shut the door. Later, many years later, I'm an adult and I'm discussing these things with my mom. And she says, "Oh, your dad was incredibly depressed, near suicidal. And he had told me that he reached out to his father who had passed and his brother, and that his brother was counseling him." So I don't have any hard proof of what it was, but it was more of a feeling that that's who it was that night in my room, was that uncle. And at certain points throughout my life, I've had connections with him. So, but what really freaked me out was the sensation. I could have sworn that it was a human being kissing my cheek. The other one was when my father passed many years later, and he used to hold my hand and kind of just rub it a particular way, and he had the cutest Spanish accent. My darling, I love you, my darling, which was very hard for him to say because Cuban men really didn't do a whole lot of that. He did it towards the end of his life, where he became a little freer with emotions. And I felt as if I was holding his hand. And again, I was drifting off to sleep, which is kind of, I think, a repetitive theme we're seeing here. When our consciousness shifts and our alpha waves and whatever are shifting a little bit, and perhaps we're more open, like Don said, where the veil is thinner. But I was holding a hand, and I knew instinctively, because I could feel it, that it was his hand. My husband's hand was much larger. My dad was very hairy. It was my father's hand. I could feel the warmth of it. And I remember just sitting there, not wanting to move, not wanting for that sensation to dissipate, because to have contact with them when they're gone is huge. But it's like my daughter says, "Yeah, okay, so dad's around, but I can't hug him. I can't, feel him." So to have just a little bit of that was mind-blowing and truly magical. So those are my PG stories that I can share.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to those kind of visitations as well. So that very special moments.
Can I just say something that struck me about that story? We never actually, when people die, we never actually say to them, "Dad, granddad, whatever, come and hold my hand." Ever. So if I'm dead, am I going to go around, just randomly holding people's hands and scaring the living bejesus out of them? I'm not, am I? Well,
I think you're just going to go around pinching their butts, Don. I don't see you holding anybody's hand.
I think you're right there.
Be real.
I'll be the pest, seriously. But no, so for the people who are listening, invite your family to hold your hand.
Yeah.
And be quiet and quiet yourself and sit in peace. And then invite them in, "Please hold my hand," and see what happens and let us know, because that would be really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's an invitation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Dawn. And thank you, Jeanette. Julie.
Hi. And be careful what you invite. Let's remember that.
Yeah. Only say mum, dad, sister, brother, nobody else.
Known people, right? Not just the whole crew.
Well said, Julie.
That's like the warning, the warning.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the story I was going to share is a little bit spooky. I spent a night, actually more than one night, in a haunted hotel in New York State. It's called the Shanley Hotel. And now it's a bed and breakfast, and it's very haunted, very active, a really interesting experience of consciousness. The beings there, it's a hotel, so some of them come and go, like guests, and others live there. They stay there, and they will answer to their name. And they're aware of what you're doing and why you're there, and they'll mess with you. So the first experience was in what was called the gentleman's room, which was where they would gamble. It was owned by mobsters. The Irish mob is the family built it. We're connected to the Irish mob in New York City. And they had a room where they did gambling, and the ladies, no ladies were allowed in there except for the owner's wife. So I slept in there with 2 or 3 other ladies. It's a big room, so there were maybe 5 queen size beds, and we each had our own bed. And my coworker, she took an Ambien and went to sleep. Right. And so
that would have been me.
Yeah. So the second night, the first night, nothing happened. And the other coworker that we had with us had been a regular at that hotel, had been a volunteer like tour guide, and they knew her really well and they recognized her voice. And so nothing happened. It was completely silent. None of the things we thought could happen happened. Right. So the second night, she took her Ambien, went to sleep. She actually woke up outside the bed pulled off the bed on the floor. And I was just laying in my bed and just getting relaxed. I was very tired after not sleeping the first night so much. And I would go and lay on my side. And every time I would lay on my side, I would get chills down my back, like spirit wanted to spoon. It was like this icy jelly feeling. And it was just, on the contour of my body, just like. So I'd go and I'd lay on my back and be like, okay, just let me go to sleep. Let me go to sleep. When I would go to sleep, I heard the lyrics, from the song that said, I always feel like somebody's watching me. That song, right?
That's a big no from me. I'd have been out of there. No way.
So I'm like, okay, spirit wants to spoon. So I didn't sleep that much that day or that night. And then we went back, and it was a private event. Friends of mine had rented it out. And so we all knew each other. It was only like 12 or 13 people in the whole building. And we had the entire room to ourselves, myself and my husband. Right. So I stayed in the same room. Yep. So, but I stayed in the same bed. We got in the same bed that I had that experience in. He knew about the experience. And again, it was the gentleman's quarters or the gentleman's game room. So women shouldn't have been there. So they would mess with women more, of course. And so my husband couldn't sleep. Like he kept tossing and turning and tossing and turning. And then he got up and he went to another bed and left me there.
Oh, had to sign the divorce papers there and then.
I know. Well, it does come up when I need to win an argument. That's what happens because I went, when I finally went to sleep, I felt a very clear disturbance in the force around my derriere that was just not quite pleasant. And I had to tell him to go away, that he was not welcome there. So,
wow.
That is my story.
You're a really kind wife, Julie, because I would have said, my husband's in the other bed. Go to that butt over there. I mean, he ditched me. You go mess with him. Really, really nice.
I couldn't believe it. I was just like, no, we're not doing that. And, they can get very handsy. They were probably very handsy in life. So,
that's true. Yeah.
Next time I'll choose a different bedroom.
Yeah. That's a bit, choose wisely.
And now it's all I can say to that. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Julie. That's, again, we've got all kinds of stories going. Common theme, but different scenarios. Elena, I nearly forgot your name then. Elena, I've known you for years. It's like, anyway. Elena, what have you got
Thanks,
for us?
Michelle. Right, so I've never told the real version of the story because like you say, it's not something you hear people talk about. And I was 20, 21, and I was living at home with my mum, and my stepdad, who I call my dad, he was in the lounge with my daughter, and I could hear. I came home for lunch from work, actually. Yeah, I sometimes do that to get something to eat or something. And I went into my room, and I was just sitting on the bed, and I was gonna go off back to work, and all of a sudden, I just felt really, really tired, like just whoa, like that. So I was like, oh, so I lay down, and then I could hear the telly in the lounge. I could hear like my daughter. I could hear everything. So I wasn't asleep. And the next thing there was this. It was a grey figure. That's all I can say. It was grey, and it was. I don't know. I've never seen anything like it again. But it was a grey figure. And it was I was laying on my back and it was on top of me. And I always tell the version that it felt like it was trying to get inside me, take over me. But the real version is, and I remember thinking like it was literally trying to like rape me. Like that's what it was trying to do. And it's like you can't move, you can't do anything, but whatever I must, because there's obviously a history in my family of, spirits and everything. I must have just done something, but it was, he couldn't, the end, whatever it was, this grey figure couldn't get in, like, couldn't do anything, couldn't actually get inside me or do anything because obviously I had some protection on me, And after that, I remember just sitting up and I was just like, did that happen? And I always think about it and I can see the grey figure. I always see it in my head. I can see it as if it happened yesterday, and it's like, whoa, does that really happen? But this is the first time I actually even really saying the whole thing, but I'll never forget this figure. Like it's like a body, but just grey, if you get me. There was no face, there was just a grey figure. But you could feel it. You could feel it. Like it was like solid as in you could feel it, but it was grey as in just not
Yeah. So that's an alien encounter.
Well, you see, this is the thing now. When you said, before I started actually practicing like now, in our circle and everything, I just thought of spirits as, spirits, and then we've got our, and it's not until like listening to people about entities and things, and I'm like, okay, maybe that wasn't actually even a spirit, because like, I don't know if a spirit could actually do that. And being grey, was it actually maybe an entity of some kind? Thinking now, something else. But I know I was awake because I could hear everything, and like I know, and I could feel as well. But yeah, but he didn't get very far anyway. I must have put some protection thing or whatever it was, or I must have been protected anyway. But yeah.
Wow. That's interesting. Yeah. So did he have he couldn't see a face or a...
No, there was no face. It was just like, like you could see the hip, like almost if you imagine like a person being, not the skeleton, but just like a silhouette of a person, but it was a solid silhouette. So it's like if you could touch your shadow and you could feel your shadow, but your shadow was grey.
Mm.
Do you get me? And it was more 3D. Okay.
Yeah.
So
But
imagine that's a being from a different dimension.
Yeah, well,
And
that's
again,
what I was thinking. Alien.
The veil is kind of like shimmery. So you're seeing through the veil, you're feeling through the veil. And that's how this being is able to physically engage, interact, if you like.
yeah, because it kind of made you tired as well. Like, just made you, like, I wasn't tired. I was not, like, I was literally just picking something up and gonna have lunch, and so, and then it was like almost, like they put like made you tired and made you lay down. You know what I mean? It was kind of weird. Yeah. Anyway,
that has happened to me, as in the tiredness, just the other night, with a couple of us. I've forgotten who it was, and they were doing like a channeling, and I was just observing, watching, whatever. And the next thing is, I woke up after they'd finished. I literally, sat in this chair and physically dropped off. With no like leading up to, when you get tired, nothing like that. It was literally 1 minute I was aware, the next minute I was gone. So
yeah, that's exactly
the
it. Like
capability of doing that, whether it's shifting of energy or what, I don't know.
Have a powerful influence in that respect over us if they want to, if they need to.
Yeah, but I was so aware of everything around me, if you get me. So it's like you don't, you were gone, but you were aware of everything. So it was like you were awake, but in another, like,
dimension.
I wouldn't even say trance. It wasn't like even a trance, because you could hear everything. It's it was just very weird. It never happened again, but thank God.
Wow. Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Elena. And again, this just shows the variation of experiences, and how spirit, or whether it be alien or other beings, whatever they may be, coming through. So
many things to pick apart there, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. Christian, what do you have for us?
Well, it occurred to me as the discussion was going on that I should say something about soul energy exchange and sex. Okay. And that is simply that sex is a holy act because of the amount of soul energy exchange that happens during sex. And it made me realize by the discussion that energy is still there even after death, and that spirits still have that energy, and they can still touch you in that way. That soul energy exchange can happen for a whole lot of reasons. So I guess my first story is to talk about one of my spirit guides who's been with me for 5,000 years, and we shared an incarnation about 5 millennia ago when I was basically one of his wives, if not the wife. And about 20 to 21 years ago, I was in an extreme depression and an extreme funk, and I felt totally alone. And Vajendra came to me, and he instilled in me the memory of that incarnation and me being a woman in that incarnation, and us making love in that incarnation. And it was full, romantic lovemaking, etc. And when it was done, I was like back to being in the incarnation as Christian, but I felt so blessed, so loved, that this entity had been with me for 5,000 years. Okay. But I also had the abundant, loving, physical memory of that sexual lovemaking encounter. So that was the most powerful one for me. And I felt like my soul had been rejuvenated and energized. So the next one is more Disney Haunted Mansion. That was visiting, I got the Ernestine and Hazel's Haunted Bar in Memphis, Tennessee with a group of mediums. Because I had been on this retreat in Olive Branch, Mississippi, which is across the border from Memphis. And we wanted to go to this haunted bar that had this history of having a brothel upstairs. And so we go to this bar, and I think there are 3 male mediums. I'm one of the male mediums, and there are like, I think 6 or 7 female mediums there. And we go there and we take the tour of, the upstairs part in the rooms that was where the brothel was above the bar. And it was very interesting because ladies of the evening spirits who were haunting the place didn't really appreciate.
Why do you not go to these places? I don't know.
didn't really appreciate the female mediums coming through, and so they weren't really nice to them, and they wanted them to leave. Whereas the male mediums who had gone had a very different experience with these lady of the evening spirits, But they came up to me, and I was the only gay medium of the 3, and and I just said, I'm sorry, but you don't have the parts that I like. They got like a male prostitute spirit. It was like very muscular, very built, and everything. If you said it, I was like, oh my God, this is over the top. So that happened. Okay. So I would go back there with other mediums just to see if a similar thing happened again, with male mediums and female mediums. But my final story has to do with when I was seeing someone who I liked a lot, who I still like a lot, but he's, not for me. But I started seeing him again after his husband had transitioned to spirit. And he had transitioned to spirit, I think, for like 6 months before or something like that. I forget how many months before. But in the process of our starting to make out, his husband came in, the spirit of his husband.
Ménage à trois.
We went on and we made love, but it was very strange because I felt like I was in a bit of a porn movie with his late husband narrating and encouraging and telling me what he liked. Don't do this, don't do that. So that was just very, very strange, even though it was
like a sex coach.
You call him a sex coach?
Oh, that's awesome.
I've had a variety of, experiences with spirit and sex. But like I said before, in the process of this conversation here, I've realized, that truth that sex is a holy act because of the amount of soul energy exchange that happens during sex. And everyone shares their soul, and that's other souls shares their soul with you. So that's it.
Thank you, Christian. You had a real mixed bag there going on.
I have to know though, Christian. So the spirit ladies of the night that were rejected by you, were they happy that they didn't have another customer, or were they upset that you were refusing them?
Well, they got me the product I liked.
Well, that's really off the charts. I love that. How progressive of them.
Considerate, very considerate.
Well-rounded ladies of the night. I like it.
Yeah.
Resume.
Absolutely hysterical.
Oh,
That
they knew
was
how to
awesome.
entertain. Yeah. Thank you, Christian.
Yeah.
Thank you. Kim, what have you got for us?
I don't know if I have much for you.
A bit hard to follow that story.
But that was amazing. That's amazing. I do think intimacy can happen, but I will say that my experiences are limited. I think it's more like just barely touching, and then I immediately like, no, back off, I set the boundaries. So I kind of shut it down, because I was pretty scared to death.
Yeah.
And I'm married and I've been married a long time. So if my husband can come back and take care of me, that would be fantastic. As long as I know it's him, right? Like, okay, give me your ID. What's your name? What's your address? What's your date of birth?
Checklist.
Give me your social security number, the last 4 digits.
Well, that's it. And I think the common theme here is, as Jeanette said, there is a common theme. But for those who have been visited by a loved one, a husband, a previous loved one, there is that sense of knowing that it's them, whether they see, whether they feel. It's just a knowing that they are aware, and it's that familiarity. And I'm going to say, and we could probably all agree that is what allows them. They give permission because they know who it is. Probably in Julie's case, in Christian's case, well, you kind of go into those places asking for trouble.
This is it. You go to a knocking shop, and that's exactly what you're getting, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. But again, as Kim said, if her husband was to come back to her once he passed, or anyone's loved one, who you shared an intimate relationship with, it is very possible, because you've all just shared stories of the possibilities. Even Elena's was a little different, but still, you've still got something in spirit or entity form, alien form, who really knows, because there's, the universe is very big. That variety, such a variety. So does anyone...
a term for it? It's called spectrophilia.
Really?
Yeah, I've just Googled it. A term often used to describe sexual attraction or interaction with a spirit or ghost.
Wow. Well, there you go. It even has a name.
Look at that.
Well, there's old stories of succubus, and they were, I think, male entities that would have sex with humans, but they were malevolent. I don't think that they were loving experiences.
Succubus or incubus?
I have an experience. An incubus is the male, the succubus is the female.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
I had an experience with one of those as well as a young person.
Ooh.
Oh.
Did you want to share that?
I can share that. It's a little bit, I was wondering if Elena's was maybe the same or similar, but I didn't know what it was. I was 12 or 13. I didn't know anything about sex because it was the 80s. So, and I was not living in the haunted house that I had grown up in. So I hadn't had any weird touching experiences while I was there at all. And I had probably 6 times woken up, and I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. And I could see and hear everything. It was nighttime. And I had pressure on my chest. And so the first time I was just terrified. I didn't know what was happening. And then the second time I'm like, I'm not going to let this happen. Right. So I kind of taught myself to wake myself up. And so the final time I woke up screaming get off of me, get out, right? And I saw fully on my chest a person who was bigger than me. I was, again, a kid. I maybe weighed 110 pounds, and could feel their knees and their shins on my chest. And I saw them. They were dark. They had detail though. And they like shot back into the corner of the room and just stood there like for, it seemed like forever. I could see, when I close my eyes, I can still see him, which I think Elena said as well. I could see him standing in the corner, and then he finally went away, but I had to fight back. And I didn't know what that was. I never told anyone about it. Like, how do you, my parents already didn't talk about sex. How are you going to say, like, so this weird thing happened, whatever. So I actually didn't find out what that was until I was in college. And I think it was one of the very early paranormal TV shows that they spoke about it. And it's a demon. It's a known demon. And it's well documented, like in the Catholic Church. I am not Catholic. I knew nothing about demons. I didn't know anything about sex at the time. And but they come down to steal sexual energy. And there's a twist about, causing shame, like manipulating you. And that's what they kind of want to do. So.
Wow.
So that's interesting. Sorry to interrupt, take over, Shell. You talking about the Catholic Church. So I was raised Catholic. With all that comes, your guilt, blah, 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 blah. So when I started to become involved in this, there was a certain amount of fear, shame, ridicule, it goes against God, all that kind of stuff. So I actually went to see our family priest, and, I spoke to him, and I was saying, look, Father, this is what I'm getting into. I find it's really, really good for me. But of course, the Catholic Church don't agree with it, do they? And he said to me, what do you think communing with angels is? So I was like, wait, what? You talk to spirits as well? He was like, yes, we do. But you have to be careful because it's not just spirits. There are bad things there as well, which you must protect yourself from. So this is a man of God. This is a man of the church who, is lives a life of, spiritual, helping people, all that kind of stuff. Not one for fanciful ideas. Who is telling me, yes, spirits are real. Yes, there are bad things, evil things. Protect yourselves.
That's some good information there, Dawn. Some good advice. And interesting to hear from, the Catholic Church side of,
yeah,
side of things.
I thought they'd be so against it. And he's like, we do this on a daily basis. We pray, we commune with angels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wow. Interesting. We have such a wide variation of stories here. Has anyone got anything else they want to add or share?
Yeah, I just want to say, Julie, I forgot about that actually. And when you said it, the feeling on your chest, that's another thing. Yeah, like you couldn't breathe. Yeah, that's another thing that it did as well. Like, when it was on top, like it was like, yeah.
I'd like to mention
be the same.
Sorry, before we finish here, we in our higher soul self and our spirit have the power, as Julie was saying, to get the F off. You're not allowed here. And because what they're doing is fear paralyzes you. There's also the energy of that sensation of like you can't move. I had an experience like that. But prayer or meditation or calling your spirit guides or your angels or your team of light or your higher self, where you feel that passion when you connect with it. And that power blows them away. So I just want to say to everybody who's listening to the show today, you have that within you. And what Don was talking about, there are multiple, scenarios throughout the Bible from the very beginning of spirits, of angels, and, rebirths and coming back to life, But if the Catholic Church tells us we also have that ability, they lose a little bit of power. So, they're a little funny about how they actually allow us to interpret those.
I completely agree with that, and they should be more
remember,
open.
everyone, you have the power to call on and ask for protection and to bring it from inside you and say, I'm not taking this out of here.
Absolutely. Thank you for those wise words, Jeanette. Sorry, Kim, go on.
I like to add on to that. I think it's important to, as mediums and practitioners in the mediumship, it's so important for us to set boundaries all the time. So it's always good to be proactive as well, right? And then you clearing and setting your own boundaries. And setting boundaries for the entire family, your children especially.
Yeah.
That's really, really important. When the priest was saying to me, you must protect yourself, I'm like, well, how the hell do I do that? Nobody teaches you what protection is, because they don't talk about this in, your normal development circles. It's one of those subjects which, again, is taboo. When they say, you've got to ground yourself, I'm thinking, well, what the hell do you mean, ground myself? What does that mean? Basically, what they mean is not leaving yourself open to it. So, for instance, this is our time to share what we're sharing now. But when we close down from this, when we stop talking about this, I don't give it a second thought. And that's how I work, and that's how I ground myself with mediumship as well. So when I'm working as a medium, I open myself up to all my energy, my space, to invite in those who commune with my sitter. When I finish the reading, and it's like me locking the door and, virtually locking the door, and I no longer am open to communication. And that's what people need to, as Jeanette was saying, is to be aware of setting boundaries, and that you have the ability to say to people, no, you are not coming in here. But if you are constantly thinking, are there ghosts here? Are they walking around? Are they doing this? Are they doing? You are opening yourself up to who the hell wants to come in, as Julie can tell us as well. So again, as Kim said, it's about setting boundaries. Don't be walking along, playing with your Ouija boards or this, that, and the other, because you don't know what you're opening yourself up to. That's not discussed in normal circles. It's not. I started in a normal development circle and nobody talks about this. So it is really, really honest topic that needs to be opened up. So there might be listeners who think, oh God, what a crock of shit. Well, we've all had experiences where it's not a crock of shit. And there are things you need to do, your intentions, but that stands or starts in life. If you allow people to move your boundaries, push your boundaries, you're not going to be able to have the inner confidence to say to those people, this isn't acceptable. So that's going to kind of flow over into the spiritual realm as well. If you've got no boundaries set, then the boundaries are there to be pushed. So it's about having strength of mind, what is acceptable, what's not acceptable. And I don't go wrong with that. It's not acceptable to have encounters like this. It is acceptable to invite your mum, your dad in to talk to you or to hold your hand. It is not acceptable to open up knows what out there.
Absolutely. And that's, wise words there from from everyone, because I always say to people, if you had a human, just a random stranger, just wander through your house and be walking around your house, would you just allow that? Of course you wouldn't.
Absolutely.
You'd be saying to them, get out. You shouldn't be, get out of my house. The same difference with the spirit.
Yeah.
To me, it's the same difference. You know what I mean? It's, stand your ground. And it's look, in all honesty, I would say to people, if you're wanting to know more about this, you really need to search out a good teacher. And I mean, check out what they offer, check out what they teach, get yourself a good teacher, get yourself educated properly before you start delving into this randomly, willy-nilly, opening things. Pandora's box is very big and deep, because things can happen. And then you are sort of at that point of, I need help. So if you come into this educated, understanding, you've got people who you can talk to about it, then you're on the right track. You're on the right track. So thank you, everyone, for joining me here today. Now, in the show notes, I will put links, etc., to how you can find each one of these amazing mediums. Thanks again, guys. And for the viewers and listeners out there, stay tuned. We will have plenty more medium panels coming, or panel of mediums to come, with plenty more hot topics. And like I said, we will discuss the topics that others won't talk about or don't want to talk about or feel maybe inappropriate, because these are experiences that everyday people also have, not just mediums. So once again, thank you guys for joining me today, and I look forward to having you all back again very soon. To view the show notes, head over to themediumstable.com.au. If you want to watch these episodes, head over to our YouTube channel, The Mediums Table Podcast.